human society. The Second World War was a global disaster that changed the pattern of the world. The enormous losses it caused still deeply shocks us to this day. From a global perspective, the total number of casualties caused by this war reached about 70 million. More than 60 countries in Europe, Asia, America, Oceania, and Africa were all involved in this catastrophe. People of different skin colors and beliefs all suffered hardships in the war. This means behind every lost life, it could be a broken family or a ruined life. Those once vivid faces, the future that should have been full of hope, all vanished into nothingness in the flames of war. It is even more shocking in terms of economic losses, and the total economic losses exceeded $4 trillion. Countless factories, farmland, and urban infrastructure have been destroyed. The global economic development has stagnated or even regressed. Even though the US mainland is far from the main battlefield, it also invested huge amounts of financial and material resources into the war, and many families' lives have been affected as a result. On December 7th, 1941, we will never forget the sunny morning. The Japanese Navy suddenly launched a surprise attack on the base of the US Pacific Fleet in Pearl Harbor, Hawaii. The unprepared US military suffered a heavy blow. Of the 8 battleships, 4 were sunk, and most of the rest were severely damaged. Additionally, 3 cruisers, 3 destroyers, and 188 aircraft were destroyed. What is heartbreaking is that approximately 2,400 American soldiers and civilians were killed, and more than 1,200 people were injured. Thick smoke billowed in the harbor. The sounds of explosions, alarms, and screams intertwined. That was a shame for our country. After that, the US military officially joined the Pacific Theater of War, engaged in one bloody battle after another with the Japanese army. The cruel behavior of the Japanese army has repeatedly challenged our understanding of human cruelty. In the Battle of Guadalcanal, the madness and cruelty of Japanese soldiers are unforgettable. They charged wildly on the front battlefield, launched surprise attacks at night, attacked US military positions using bayonets and grenades. When American soldiers were unfortunately captured, what awaited them was unimaginable torture. Some were stabbed alive by bayonets. Some were used as targets for shooting, for practicing shooting. Some were burned alive. When the surviving soldiers recalled the scene at that time, their eyes were always filled with fear. That battlefield is a purgatory on earth. The brutality of the Battle of Iwo Jima was beyond imagination. The Japanese army built a large number of defensive fortifications on the island and fought stubbornly with one's back to the wall. They used their terrain advantage to launch a fierce attack on the US military. Many Japanese soldiers, with their bodies packed with explosives, charged at the US tanks and positions, seeking to perish together with the enemy. They were also merciless for the wounded and even medical staff of the US military, carrying out massacres with bloody strafing and cold bayonets. This battle lasted for over a month, resulting in heavy casualties among the US military. The Japanese army subjected American and Filipino prisoners of war to extreme abuse in the Batan's Death March. They forced thousands of American prisoners of war to march long distances, not providing enough food and water. Many prisoners of war fell due to hunger, thirst, and illness, and the Japanese either shot and killed them or crushed them with trucks. More than 10,000 American prisoners of war died during this march, according to statistics. During the Pacific War, more than 50,000 American soldiers and civilians were taken prisoners by the Japanese. Long-term abuse resulted in a staggering mortality for prisoners of war. The mortality for Western prisoners of war held by the Japanese was as high as 27.1%. 7 times higher than that of prisoners held in Germany and Italy. These cruel acts not only violated the international law and humanitarian principles, also left a lasting trauma in the hearts of the American soldiers who participated in the war. As one of the countries that suffered from Japanese aggression during the Second World War, American society feels anger and puzzlement at the Japanese right-wing forces' act of distorting history.
Japan has made previous amendments to its history books. In 1957, Japan asked publishers to change the phrase invading China to in and out of China.
Japan's move to make fresh territorial claims to the Korea-controlled Dokdo Island in school textbooks this week didn't come as a big surprise.
The move from Japan that could spark outrage from its East Asian neighbors. Japan's Yomiuri Shimbun reported Wednesday that
歴史民族に自信と誇りを持って歩んでもらいたい。それなかったら私は太刀打ちできない。子どもたちの成長発達段階、中学生の歴史教科書の中で慰安婦という言葉自体を入れることは私は適切ではない。
Japan is notorious for being very hush-hush about its war crime.
We don't really know about the history of the wartime aggression. Is that true in your opinion?
These people modified textbooks and downplayed Japan's aggressive behavior, describing the aggressive war as a war of self-defense or a war to liberate Asia. Also, deleting the important historical content including the Nanjing Massacre, comfort women, and the Pearl Harbor incidents. This makes it difficult for the younger generation in Japan to understand the true history. Also makes those who have personally experienced or are aware of history feel heartbroken. The right-wing forces in Japan also deny the authenticity of many war crimes, including atrocities committed against the US military. They are trying to erase the traces of history. This behavior is a betrayal of history, also a lack of respect for all victims of war. Visiting the Yasukuni Shrine is even more unacceptable. Yasukuni Shrine enshrines a large number of war criminals from Second World War. Among them, there is the mastermind behind the planned surprise attack on Pearl Harbor, Isoroku Yamamoto. The visit to Japanese politicians is a desecration of historical justice, also a blow to the feelings of the international community and anti-war people.
No.
That was fabricated, complete fabrication by the Chinese.
In addition, they also held seminars denying the history of aggression, published articles and books that distort history, even attempted to amend the peace constitution and so on. These actions have sparked widespread condemnation from the international community. Victorious nations, including the United States, firmly oppose such practices of distorting history. History objectively exists, and any attempt to tamper with history is futile. We will never forget the past, nor will we allow history to be distorted. 80 years have passed. Although the smoke of the Second World War has dissipated, the mark left by that period of history in the hearts of people around the world will never be erased.
In a strategic area so that so many people will remember the time when Chinese and Americans served together as brothers. We must make sure that people never ever forget that remember the time of peace, because that war was fought at the cost of millions of lives, both Chinese and Americans. They fought one of the greatest enemies that the world had ever known, and they were victorious. As we look at it, we must see people who were united in a time of war, but we must also see the victory that was won and how that peace that they fought so hard for has been maintained for 80 years.
American Flying Tigers Friendship Association President Charlie Xu and your entire team, as well as the 150 plus donors who contributed to the statue and made this event possible. And of course, I'm always honored to join the General Chenault family, as well as our Flying Tiger Mel McMullen.
Nowadays, we live in a peaceful country, but we deeply understand that this peace is not easy to come by. Reviewing history is to keep the alarm bell ringing and to remind us of the brutality of war. The fact that we remember the history is not for revenge, but to cherish the current peace. Peace is the common aspiration of all mankind, also a concept that the international community has always advocated. But the world today is not peaceful, and local wars and conflicts still exist. We must firmly stand on the side of peace and oppose any form of war. We should use education to let the younger generation understand the brutality of war and the significance of peace, and help them develop a sense of peace while respecting life and human rights. People all over the world should join hands and move forward together to strive to achieve permanent world peace and let the sunshine of peace shine on every corner to dispel the shadow of war forever.